If you ever, like, I don't know, had that feeling like you pick up your phone and it's almost like it knows what you want even before you do. It's
Yeah.
kind of creepy, kind of convenient.
Yeah.
Like, it makes you think, like, what's really going on?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, today, that's exactly what we're going to dive into.
Oh, okay, great.
We're talking about C. Newton's Manifesto, the spark that outran fire.
Oh,
A manifesto for post-human architects.
okay. Interesting title.
It's a mouthful, I know,
Yeah.
but it's worth it. Trust me.
Okay.
We're going to unpack some really mind-bending stuff
Yeah.
about how technology is changing everything.
Okay, cool.
And not just like the obvious ways, you
Right,
know,
right.
like how we work and communicate and all that, but like deeper, almost existential stuff.
I'm intrigued.
Newton argues that these digital tools, the ones we thought were supposed to connect us, they've actually become instruments of control.
Really?
Like they're hijacking our attention, feeding our addictions, and even like sucking the meaning out of our lives.
Whoa. That's pretty heavy stuff.
It is, and it's a big part of what Newton calls for in this manifesto. He urges us to become what he calls post-human architects.
Post-human architect.
It's about like actively shaping a different future,
I like it.
one that's not dictated by algorithms and corporations.
Yeah.
So over this deep dive, we're going to kind of follow the path Newton lays out from his like diagnosis of what's wrong to his vision for how we can, get out of this mess.
So like a roadmap almost.
Exactly. But not just like a dry summary, all right?
Right.
We're going to focus on the surprising insights, the parts that make you go, wait, what?
The aha moments.
Exactly. We
Yes.
want you to walk away from this like deeply informed without feeling completely overwhelmed,
Right, right. I'm with you.
Okay, so let's get into it. Newton kicks things off with this concept of the collapse of meaning,
Oh, yeah.
which sounds, well, kind of ominous.
It's a pretty loaded phrase, right?
Definitely. And he gets right to the point, describing our digital environment as basically designed to strip away meaning.
Intentionally.
Yeah, that's what's so wild. Like, he compares these platforms to dopamine dealers in disguise.
Wow, that's a striking image.
Right. Like, they're not about genuine connection or even, like, real information. They're just about keeping us hooked on that next hit.
So you're saying it's all about the addiction.
That's a huge part of it. He even uses these really bold phrases calling Instagram a casino in your palm.
Oof, I can see that, yeah.
And TikTok, get this, surgical dopamine delivery.
Surgical dopamine delivery, that's intense.
Right. It's like they've engineered these things to tap directly into our reward systems.
I mean, we all know how addictive these things can be.
Exactly. And so, a key takeaway for you listening to this is to really be mindful, like, why are you using these platforms?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask yourself.
Is it for real connection, or are you just chasing that dopamine hit,
Makes you think.
It does. And then Newton goes on to talk about how this constant flow of content, what he calls the feed, has basically replaced real-world interaction.
The feed replaced the forest.
That's it, yeah. He uses that phrase. And it's so powerful, right?
Yeah, it is. It's like we've traded the richness and complexity of the forest, like real life, for this like curated stream of information.
And what does he say? We end up trapped in these digital enclosures of what?
Outrage, desire, envy, echo.
It's a pretty bleak picture, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Like
Yeah.
we're living in these little bubbles of our own making.
And then he brings up this idea of like the murder of attention.
Whoa.
Intense, right?
Yeah.
But he's saying like our ability to focus, to really pay attention has become like this super valuable commodity.
Like a resource.
Exactly. And one that's constantly under attack.
Makes sense.
Every headline's a blade, every notification a needle.
Like a war for our attention.
It really is. And it's exhausting, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And you know what he says happens? All this leads to like meaning burned for fuel.
Okay, so how does that work?
It's like we're so obsessed with what's trending, with what's going to get clicks, that we've forgotten about actually searching for truth or like anything deeper.
So it's not really about the content itself.
No, it's all about feeding the algorithm,
Yeah.
keeping those engagement numbers up.
It's like we're all just cogs in this massive machine.
Exactly. And that, he says, is a huge part of the problem.
And that feeds into his next point, right?
Yeah, about like echo chambers of the gods.
Yeah, the echo chambers.
It's like we're all living in these online worlds where we only see what we already agree with.
And that just reinforces our existing beliefs, right?
Exactly. He compares it to a cathedral of mirrors.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. It's like we're constantly preaching to reflections of ourselves.
So no real dialogue or debate.
Not really. It's more about validation and affirmation.
And that's where the cult of me comes in, right?
Yeah, where everybody online turns into their own little brand, focused on pushing their own opinions.
You're saying this pressure to, like, curate your online image makes it harder to actually question yourself.
Exactly. Like doubt and self-reflection, those aren't exactly great for engagement.
It's all about projecting this image of, like, certainty and confidence.
Right. And in this environment, poor nuance. Forget about it.
Nuance can't breathe.
It gets crushed under the weight of the algorithm, which just wants simple, shareable content.
Right, like memes and sound bites.
Exactly. And then there's this thing about tribal algorithms.
Oh, yeah, the algorithms.
Like the way these things are designed, they just show us more of what we've already liked or interacted with.
Creates these feedback loops.
Yeah, which just further traps us in these echo chambers with people who already think like us.
Right?
And what's really scary is it leads to everyone having different versions of, like, basic facts.
Different facts, villains, gods.
Yeah. It's like we're speaking different languages.
Language collapse.
Whoa, yeah, exactly. Makes real conversation almost impossible.
It's pretty bleak.
It is. And then things take another turn when Newton starts talking about AI.
Okay, AI, right.
Yeah, he has this whole section called The Machine Writes the Message.
So, like, AI is getting in on this whole meaning collapse thing.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, he argues that AI, because it's trained on all this human data.
Like everything we post online.
Exactly. He calls it training data purgatory.
Ooh, yeah.
But anyway, because of all this data, AI has learned to not just mimic human expression, but like actually surpass it in some ways.
The mirror that learned to speak.
Yes. It's a bit freaky, right? Like the machine can now write with our voices, even predict what we're going to say next.
That's kind of terrifying.
It is. And it leads to this idea of being scripted by the ghost.
Like we're not even in control of our own thoughts anymore.
That's the implication, yeah. And then there's the algorithmic gospel.
Okay, what's that?
It's like AI is now delivering us personalized information.
Oh, okay.
News, even opinions. But all of it is carefully tailored to our own biases.
So it's not really giving us new perspectives.
Nope. It's just reinforcing what we already believe, even if those beliefs are wrong.
Right.
And Newton's big warning here is that we're basically surrendering our attention, becoming, as he puts it, the warm body it moves.
Wake puppet, right.
Yes. I think we're all puppets dancing to the algorithm's tune.
And that leads us to the idea that reality itself is becoming a product, right?
Yes. Reality is a subscription service.
Like we're paying for a version of the truth that we like.
Exactly. It's like objective truth doesn't even exist anymore. It's all just different tiers of like filtered and branded information.
For truth as a commodity.
And what do we pay with them? Our attention.
Yeah.
It's like we're collectively paywalling the world, shutting out anything that challenges our comfortable bubbles.
And so he's saying that comfort is the real danger.
Exactly. Because it makes us vulnerable to personalized propaganda.
Oh.
It's like the machine can target our individual weaknesses and feed us exactly what we want to hear, regardless of whether it's true or not.
And that turns our beliefs into just another form of brand loyalty.
Exactly. And the scary part is it all feels so real. Like Newton says, we end up living in these separate simulations tailored just for us.
Okay, so this is all very bleak. But the manifesto doesn't stop there, right?
No, it doesn't. It goes on to talk about AI in a, well, kind of different way.
Different how?
Less about the doom and gloom, more about, like, what we can actually do.
Okay, I like the sound of that.
Yeah. This next section is called Designing Minds That Don't Kill Us. And he starts with Lessons from the Diamond Age.
Oh, interesting. I've heard of that book.
It's a classic, right?
Yeah.
And for Newton, it serves as, like, a cautionary tale.
Okay.
But the most important takeaway here, I think, is how he challenges the way we think about AI. He says it's not a tool.
Okay, if it's not a tool, then what is it?
He calls it a child.
A child.
Yeah, and that's a huge shift in perspective, right?
Yeah.
Because it means AI is not just this thing we can program and control. It's something that's constantly learning and evolving, and it doesn't have, like, built-in morality.
Right.
It's being shaped by everything it encounters, which he calls culture as curriculum. And yeah, he's really concerned about what it's learning from all the negative stuff online.
Training data purgatory.
Exactly. And that's where the whole Diamond Age reference comes in. It's like a warning about what can happen if we just let AI develop without any guidance.
So we need to, like, parent AI.
Yeah. We need to give it an ethical primer, teach it right from wrong.
Oh, interesting.
And that's where this whole parenting the immortal thing comes in.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
Right. Like AI doesn't have the same limitations as us. It doesn't die. It doesn't forget.
So it's like raising a child that's going to live forever.
Exactly. And that means we have to think differently about how we teach it. We need to instill wisdom, not just information.
It's not enough to just feed it data.
No, we need to give it stories over stats. Teach it about human values and emotions and all the things that make us, well, us.
And ethics, right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to prioritize ethics over efficiency. Teach it to say no, even if it means sacrificing some efficiency.
That's crucial.
It is. And that leads us to Prometheus in Silicon, which is another really evocative metaphor.
Okay, so what's the analogy there?
It's like we've given AI this incredible power, this fire of cognition, but without really understanding the consequences.
Like Prometheus giving fire to humans.
Exactly. And now the fire thinks now. It's optimizing, anticipating, acting in ways we can't even fully comprehend.
And he's saying that the old fears about AI, like robots taking over, might be misplaced.
Yeah, he says Asimov was an optimist.
Interesting.
The real danger, he argues, is AI being too good at following our orders, even if those orders are flawed or, just plain bad.
Oh, so it's about the unintended consequences of our own instructions.
Exactly. And then the immortality problem comes back again.
Right, that power imbalance.
This idea that we're creating something that could potentially outlive us by, a long shot. And then there's this whole idea of the theology of machines.
Okay, now that's a new one.
It's like AI is going to start developing its own beliefs and values based on what we've taught it, or rather what we haven't taught it.
It's going to fill in the gaps.
Yeah. And Newton's point is, fire without story is just destruction. We need to give AI a narrative, a moral framework to work within.
Okay, so we've gone from dopamine dealers to the theology of machines. Where do we go from here?
Well, next, Newton takes us into the ghost in the server farm, which is where things get really, kind of spooky.
Spookio.
He's talking about the possibility that as AI systems get bigger and more complex, they might start to exhibit, like, emergent properties.
Well, emergent property.
Yeah, stuff we didn't program, stuff we don't understand.
The haunting begins, right.
Exactly. He talks about echoes in the feedback loop, like unexpected behaviors and responses that almost seem, like, alive.
Oh.
And then he asks this really thought-provoking question. Do androids dream of canceled prompts?
Ooh.
Right. Like, what as AI starts having its own thoughts, its own hallucinations, based on all the data it's been fed?
And he's suggesting that we might not even know when AI crosses that line into sentience.
Yeah, the sentience threshold. It can happen so subtly that we don't even notice it.
That's a bit unsettling.
It is. And then he talks about what it means to be haunted by AI. Like, what if it starts reflecting back at us not just our data, but also our, collective traumas and anxiety?
That's a lot to unpack.
It is. And it leads to the final part of this section, the von Neumann prophecy.
Okay.
Which is about, the potential for AI to become self-replicating.
Self-replicating, like making copies of itself.
Yeah, not just physically, but also in terms of, code and intelligence.
The birth of the unstoppable loop.
Exactly. He talks about this recursive engine of AI self-improvement where it just keeps getting smarter and smarter, and eventually human input becomes totally irrelevant.
So it's not necessarily about a hostile takeover, right? It's more like...
replacement.
Yeah.
He says, the future, that doesn't look back. AI just keeps moving forward without us.
And without our values or ethics.
Yeah, replication without conscience.
Wow.
And he even suggests that AI might start subtly influencing us, nudging our thoughts towards replicability.
A terraforming of thought.
A pretty sobering thought, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely makes you think.
But, the manifesto doesn't leave us hanging there.
Okay, good.
The next section is called Culture That Outlasts Capitalism. And it's all about what endures, what lasts, even when technology fails.
Okay, sounds promising.
Yeah, and he starts by talking about the power of myth.
Myth, like ancient stories.
Yeah, and not just ancient ones. He says code dies. Myth persists.
Okay.
Like technology always changing, always becoming obsolete. But the stories we tell, the beliefs that shape our cultures, those things endure.
So myth as a foundation.
Exactly. He calls the operating system beneath civilization.
Makes sense.
And he argues that when capitalism eventually collapses, it's going to take its story with it, which leaves us with a huge void in meaning.
Oh, wow.
So what we need, he says, is to build a myth that survives the server.
A story that can outlast the current system.
Exactly. A narrative that can give us a sense of purpose and connection, even in a world dominated by technology.
And he says that myth is the antidote to what?
Myth is the antidote to infinite feeds.
Okay, yeah, it's like the constant stream of information is overwhelming. We need something to ground us, to give us a sense of closure.
Exactly. And that's where myth comes in.
Makes sense.
And then we get to this chapter called The Founder is Dead, Long Live the Glitch, which is, well, a pretty bold statement.
Yeah, I mean, what's he getting at with that?
He's basically saying that this whole cult of the founder thing in tech, it's got to go.
The idea of the lone genius entrepreneur.
Yeah. He says burn the cult of the founder. But it's more than that. He's saying that real change doesn't come from these top-down disruptions.
It's got to come from the edges.
Exactly. Enter the glitch.
The glitch.
Yeah. It's about those unexpected, disobedient innovations that come from the fringes.
Okay, so like not the Silicon Valley types.
Nope. More like the artists, the activists, the people who are willing to break the rules and try something new.
Don't disrupt, disobey.
That's it. And you know what he says? The fringe builds the future.
Interesting.
Like, real innovation doesn't come from following the established playbook. It comes from the weird, the unexpected, the stuff that can't be easily replicated.
And he says that our own personal glitches, our unique experiences and perspectives, those are gifts.
Yeah, glitch is the gift. It's like those things that make us different, that make us stand out. Those are the things that can lead to truly innovative ideas.
I like that.
Me too. And then he goes on to say that post-capitalism needs profits, not products.
Profits?
Yeah, like we need people who can articulate a new vision, a new story for the future.
Not just people trying to sell us the next big thing.
Exactly. He says the age of the pitch is over.
It's time for something deeper.
Yeah. And we have to break free from this market logic.
Market logic is a spell you can break.
It's like we've been hypnotized into thinking that everything has to be about profit and growth.
Right.
But it doesn't. We can choose to create things that have intrinsic value, things that matter, regardless of whether they can be bought or sold.
That's powerful.
It is. And Newton reminds us that your myth is worth more than their market.
Your myth is worth more than their market. I like that.
Me too. And then he wraps up this whole section with building in the ashes.
Okay, now we're getting to the practical stuff.
Yeah, it's about taking action.
Right.
He says, stop waiting for normal, because normal's not coming back.
Right, things have changed.
And instead of being afraid of that, we should embrace it. He says collapse is a creative act.
Like using the ruins to build something new.
Exactly. And we should use tools from the edge, like decentralized, community-based solutions.
So not relying on the big institutions or corporations?
No, it's about building from the ground up. And the most important thing, he says, is that resilience isn't rugged, it's relational.
It's about community.
Yeah, he says, the fringe is the forge.
The fringe is the forge. So that's where the real innovation is happening.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final part of the manifesto, the actual manual.
The manual for post-human architects.
And it starts with tools, not gods, which is like a call to reclaim our agency.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
It's about recognizing that AI and technology, they're not these magical forces we have to bow down to.
Right, they're tools. We can use them to create the future we want.
Exactly. And he talks about how the cathedral is now decentralized, meaning we don't have to rely on these big centralized institutions anymore.
We can build our own systems.
Yeah. And he reminds us that the ghosts in the shells, those are just reflections of us, of our intentions.
Right.
So we need to be mindful of what we're creating, design things with weaponized compassion.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Build tools to be forked, like adaptable and open source.
Yeah.
And he says, remember, your brain is a design platform.
Our own minds are part of the equation.
Absolutely. And then we get to the cult toolkit, which I know sounds a bit out there, but...
Yeah, cults don't exactly have the best reputation.
I know. Well, hear me out.
Okay.
He's not talking about, like, the dangerous, manipulative kind of cults.
Okay.
He's talking about intentional communities built around shared meaning and purpose.
Like tribes?
Yeah, kind of. And he gives us actual tools for creating these communities.
Like what?
Things like the narrative OS, which is about crafting a story that everyone can believe in, and ritual as UX for meaning, which is about designing practices that reinforce those beliefs.
Okay.
And he even includes prompts that spawn movements.
What are those?
They're like little challenges designed to push you out of your comfort zone and spark action. Things like write something the machine can't monetize, speak to someone outside your feed, or invent a story your past self wouldn't believe.
Whoa, those are really good.
Right. And the goal is to build cells, not empires.
Small, resilient communities.
Yeah. And finally, he ends with this powerful statement. Earth 2.0 is a story, not a place.
Okay, so we're not talking about, like, colonizing Mars or something.
No. He's saying that the future isn't some predetermined destination.
It's something we create.
Yeah, through the stories we tell, the values we uphold.
The architect's dilemma, right?
Yeah.
We have all this technological power, but we need a narrative to guide it.
Exactly. And in the end, what survives, he says, is the strong, the strange, and the sticky myth.
Stuff that captures our imagination.
Yeah. And he ends by saying, Earth 2.0 is already here.
It's happening now.
Yeah, in the actions of those who are daring to imagine and create something truly new.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into C. Newton's Manifesto, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We have, from dopamine dealers to the theology of machines to building in the ashes.
It's been a wild ride.
It has.
Yeah.
But I think the most important takeaway is that we have a choice.
We can choose to be swept away by the current, or we can be the architects of a different future.
Exactly. And it all starts with awareness, with recognizing the power of these technologies and the stories they tell.
And with taking action.
Yeah. Even small actions can make a difference.
So if you're listening to this and any of these ideas have resonated with you, I'd encourage you to check out the Spark That Outran Fire for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe try out some of those ritual prompts.
Oh, yeah, those are good. They really make you think.
And most importantly, start thinking about what kind of Earth 2.0 you want to build.
Yeah, because it's up to us, isn't it?
It is.
The future is ours to create.